Welcome everybody to today's MN365 user group meeting. Specifically, let's hit the message center announcements for this last month. And as always, there's a lot of information that happens over the course of the month, and there's a lot of updates that happen, timeline changes, content changes. So make sure you're looking through specifically for your tenant and what's happening there. This one, as I was kind of going through it, is very Teams heavy for some reason. There's a lot of stuff happening again for the Teams side of things, but I want to hit a couple of them before we go into Teams a little bit more. So let's get started. So the first one is the SharePoint Online one. And as you know, from a Microsoft perspective, we've been adding a lot of different templates. Well, there's 3 new templates coming out with this particular one. Should already be out. Should already be seeing this. The crisis communication team is already an option that you can use, and it's really for any of those crisis type scenarios where you need to spin something up quickly, and all the tools are there to be able to help with that, whatever you're trying to do to manage that crisis. There is an IT help desk option, especially if you don't already have some kind of a tool that does this. This is a quick and dirty one, so maybe you have a smaller group that needs to do triage as tickets are coming in. This is an option for that. And then a new employee onboarding team is also available for you to use. Just make sure that when you're looking at these, by the way, they're coming, right? They're gonna be out if they're not already out, ready for you. And so just make sure you notify your users of what these are and how they can utilize that. All right, another SharePoint Online. This one is, and I've been doing SharePoint for quite a while. And this one actually hits an issue that a lot of us have felt, especially when we maybe have done too much of something inside a SharePoint team site, where you would get that feeling of, oh, by the way, this is going to work. And all of a sudden, bam, it didn't. And you didn't get a good error saying what the heck happened. So this one is really about site limits. And specifically, within SharePoint, if you have a combination of lists and libraries that are at 2,000 of those in a site, and number one, if you are doing that, we need to talk. Probably not a good idea for doing that, but the idea is that what's going to happen is that at that point, if you hit that 2,000 limit, and that not only includes lists and libraries, but also subsites. If you have 2,000 subsites, again, give me a call, we'll talk about it. You're going to get this error. This is the attempted operation is prohibited because it exceeded the list view threshold. And I've seen that term list view threshold a lot, understanding that's really that limitation. Okay, so the other thing too is sometimes, like when you're doing developing and you use APIs, sometimes you can get around that. Well, that's not going to be the case either. So take a look at this information, make sure that you're notifying your users of this, and make sure you're doing a good job on your governance so you don't get to that point. All right, a little bit of Teams, Yammer, and Viva. If you haven't seen the announcements, Viva Engaged has been released. And really, basically what this is a rebranding of the communications app, basically Yammer inside of Teams. This is going to be a big deal for some organizations because now it really brings in that whole Viva concept. And it is kind of a new introduction of what Yammer is, that community side of things. Nothing you really need to do from an administration control side of things, but understand that if you are blocking Communities app for some reason, maybe you're not utilizing Yammer in your organization, now you may want to also block that Viva Engage until you're ready to be able to deploy that and get that going. But for all the rest of you, make sure you just notify your users and update any documentation and knowledge management. All right. Let's jump the stream for a second. Okay, so something that's going to be available here in August is the ability to be able to actually record a video from stream. And so I know there's other tools, other ways to be able to do something like that, but now you have yet another place that you can do this recording. And this allows you to be able to do a webcam or for screen record if you want to do that. And then after the fact, you have the ability to add text or links or even some backgrounds or filters that will help in that video. And you can do it at specific moments in time. Once this video is done, it's going to get uploaded into OneDrive so that you have access to it. Then you can start sharing it out as you need to. Again, make sure you notify your users that this change is happening. All right. There is an update coming to organizations that have deployed Microsoft Teams rooms. And in Teams rooms, just to make sure we're all on the same page, there are two flavors of that. There is the Teams rooms that run on Windows, and then there's the Team rooms that run on Android. This is focusing on the new update that came out for Windows, and this has already started happening for some organizations over the next couple weeks. It's going to complete, but really there's a couple of things that are happening with this update, and some of them are kind of excited about that capability of being able to, I don't know if you guys have done this yet, but the ability to join a meeting via a meeting code and an ID. That's nice. I can do that in Teams, but then what I could do is I can now do that in a MTR, a Microsoft Teams room on Windows. Noise suppression is coming to those meetings from those rooms. So if you have something going outside the door, immediately you can't close that door. It's not going to cause any problems. You have a shared tray experience that's happening. Another piece is that mute and unmute. You actually will see that up on the screen as opposed to seeing it on the microphone. So you'll see it in two locations. There's some administrative settings for content layouts, as well as modern auth is going to be a big part of that, and end-to-end encryption on one-to-one calls or room to somebody else calls that you can be able to implement. And that's configuration you can set up in the MTR. Again, that's happening now. So be ready for that. Let's jump to more Teams. And this one is a good one because of the fact is that breakout rooms has been really a big conversation for a lot of organizations that really need that ability to take a meeting and then break out into smaller groups to be able to do things. Well, one of the issues was being able to pre-assign. And so now here, right now in preview, it's out right now or should be out for some of you. And then coming out later on this month, for everybody to have outside of the preview program, the ability when a meeting is set up as a channel meeting and you have a breakout room, you then will be able to pre-assign those users into breakout rooms. Again, this is only in a channel meeting. We couldn't do this before we had this ability with just a regular meeting. Now channel meetings are able to do that pre-assigned side of things. But it does have to be scheduled or added into that channel for it to work. Again, notify your users, let them know what's going on, and update your notifications. All right, this one, I came across this one. I'm like, oh, this is actually a really good idea because I've come across a couple use cases where this would be very helpful. So the ability in Teams, so you're in Teams chat and somebody pings you, and maybe somebody you don't necessarily think that's a good idea to be able to have that conversation. So there is going to be this interim screen that's going to pop up that says, hey, do you want that talk to this person? And you can allow that person to come in and have that chat with you, or you block it, right? So this is only on one-on-one chats with that external user from your company, right? So that whatever at your company name or somebody's company name.com. You can accept or block it. And if you block it, that not only blocks that message, but also blocks the presence for that person. So they would not be able to see if you're available or not available, which I think that's a good part of that as well. So notify your user this is happening. This is mid-August to September where this is coming out. All right. Teams, another thing for Teams, and in fact, you could probably do this right now. Some of you will have this already, but early August to late September, we're rolling out the ability to be able to pop out content into a separate window. So you could have, chat and content separate so that you can see a lot and put it on two different screens. This is screen share. This is PowerPoint Live. This is Whiteboard. Looks like Tom already has it. He loves it already. Supported devices. Now, the one thing that they did say in this particular message center is that lower end devices, as far as hardware specs, probably would not be able to handle it because we're talking about a lot of activity happening with Teams. But medium and high end spec hardware, yeah, for sure, will work. But just make sure you let your users know about this and update your documentation on that. All right, so those are, as you noticed, there was a lot of team stuff that are happening on there. But some quick mentions happening. A couple things that I thought was interesting. The first one was in mid-August to the end of December, SharePoint Online is going to have enabled the ability to connect to it via IPv6, which is obviously more of a higher standard, a better standard when it comes to network connectivity. So it's important to understand this is being done automatically. But if you do have, back-end systems that are automatically pulling things in that just exclusively use IPv4, they could be upgraded to be able to use IPv6. The other thing too is you're going to start seeing a column in your OneDrive. It's called Activity, right? And basically, it's in your My Files list view, and it's going to show you what's been happening more with that, or more detail, I should say, with that particular file. So especially with files that are being collaborated on. So you're going to get a little bit more detail as far as what's going to happen. Another one I thought was interesting was this one on Teams. Start a Teams chat with a distribution group, mail-enabled security group, or an Office 365 group. And we've had a lot of, and I've heard a lot of use cases where they don't necessarily want to recreate a distribution group into an Office 365 group to be able to get them in Teams, right? So what they're able to do now is, with this change happening mid-August to late August, is the ability to go into chat. I want to do a new group chat. You go in and put that security group or that distribution group name in there. It'll pop up. And it will actually spin up a chat group with that distribution list. So it's a nice little feature, but understand if that group is over 250, that's all you get is 250. So the first 250 users in that group, that's what you're going to get. So keep that in mind. Another one I like is this language interpretation in Teams. And I would highly suggest you take a look at that if you need to use interpreters for your Teams meetings and any type of those Teams meetings. Maybe it's a public one versus internal. That might be beneficial. This is coming and completed here in late August. Allowing a professional interpreter to translate what the speaker says. And the important thing is in real time. It is not a delayed, it's in real time, right? So as they're hearing it, they can then speak it in that other language. And then they'll be able to make that as an option inside your Teams meeting options, right? So if I go in the Teams meeting, there's going to option there for language interpretation, right? And then I can say who's going to be that interpreter. Understand that is real time. So it's a great feature that's happening. The other thing for those organizations that do have Macs, and specifically the more updated version of Macs, that native Apple Silicon support is available here late August to early September. So it's going to be a much better improvement on that Apple Silicon side of hardware. And then another one I really thought was interesting, and especially since I do a lot of use in Outlook, I use my categories a lot. But I like this feature that's coming out here in August that allows in Viva Insights. If you guys are familiar with Viva Insight, that's what's happening from a collaboration side of things in your Outlook and maybe even Teams. But now what it's going to do is it's going to take a look at my categories, my custom categories, and be able to say, okay, so how am I allocating time across these different categories, right? So if I color code or if I put a category on my calendar items, then it's going to say, oh, you spend X, Y, and Z in this particular category versus other ones, right? To help you be better as a collaborator. All right, a bunch of updated ones. These are all timeline ones. As I was mentioning, sometimes they come across as timeline ones versus maybe it's a change in intent as far as what the verbiage is inside the message. But these are the big ones that I want to make sure that you guys are available. We did talk about a couple of these last meeting. The Teams meeting poll new question rating, that's been delayed. It should be completed late August as opposed to late July. talking about the caller ID, dynamic caller ID in call apps. That was also delayed to that late August. Annotations, we talked about this just briefly. Annotations on presenter shared screen. So if as I'm presenting, I'd be able to go in and do an annotation in here, and other people can collaborate along with that. So you notice the timelines have changed. The standard is out. It's done. But GCC, GCCH, and DoD is going to be late. And then finally, the admin action required. Important one that was just literally thrown out here was the retirement of the Exchange Online PowerShell with MFA version 1, right? So December 31st is when it's totally going to be deprecated. Support for V1 is going to end August 31st. So keep that one in mind. Just make sure if you're utilizing those PowerShell commands, if you're scripting against it, make sure it's on the version 2 of that module versus being version 1. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Michelle.